So it's a which one doesn't belong. Raise your hand if you think the first one doesn't belong. Why do you think that the first one doesn't belong? It's the only one. So the only one that is positive linear. So I would agree with that. It's not the only one that's trending positive, like you could say the bottom right one is trending positive, but it is the only one that is both positive and linear. Linear meaning like straight line. All right, anyone else want to add why the first one doesn't belong? Okay, raise your hand if you chose B is not belonging. Okay, Remy, why?
Because they're all scattered.
Okay, all scattered, the rest are not scattered. All right, anyone else have another reason that one doesn't belong? Parker? It has no correlation. At least maybe not visibly. All right, we'll talk about those of you that may not know correlation yet. That's actually like the subject of today. So yeah, no correlation. Raise your hand if you think that C doesn't belong. Okay, Keegan, why do you think C doesn't belong? Okay, I agree with that. I would even say it's probably the only negative one anyway, like this one, like, yeah, we said no correlation, but if I had to draw a trend line, I'd probably draw it looking like that, even though like they're way far from it. But anyway, in the bottom left one, on my screen at least, C for you, it is the only one trending downward. All right, and then who says that D doesn't belong? All right, Keegan. Okay, so positive non-linear. The pattern of this actually follows a different type of function that you guys will learn about next semester, called exponential functions, but you don't have to worry about that this semester. But just like how you know y equals mx plus b is for straight lines, you're going to learn like two other major type of functions this year. But for right now, we're still kind of focusing on linear, y equals mx plus b. All right, but good. These, which one doesn't belong, warm-ups usually help us associate our vocabulary using our math vocabulary. So we're going to kind of clean up some of this in today's lesson. So let me show you the slides. I haven't done that lately. Today's the 8th. Let me find it. But the goal of today, you can always find in the slides. You can find a lot of things in the slides, but you'll really know that you're successful if you can meet what's the learning targets. So like, can you describe the goodness of fit of a linear model using what we call the correlation coefficient? And can you match the correlation coefficient with a scatter plot and a linear model? So by the end of the lesson, if you could do those two things, then you met the goal. If not, now you know what to ask me. Like, hey, Miss Medina, I'm having trouble matching the correlation coefficient and I can better help you. Versus when you just like come to tutoring and say, I don't know, I just want to get my grade up. Like, okay, how do you want to do that? You want to retake a test? Are you ready to retake a test? Like, what help do you need? All right, speaking of tutoring, I do have tutoring today. If you want to come by, I have it every Wednesday. Other teachers have it Tuesday or Thursday that also teach algebra if Wednesdays don't work for you. But Wednesdays work for me, so I'll be here after school if you need help with that. Because we only have 2 more lessons after this. So we'll be done with the teaching and learning by Monday. Tuesday, you'll have all your study guides and time to work on them while we do the binder checks. And then Wednesday, you're taking the unit test on it. So really short unit. here's where I put the slides, or not the slides, the video lessons. I'll even include videos from last year if you want to see it taught maybe a slightly different way, if you want to get ahead. Here's what your practice is. It says 2 attempts, but if you ever email me and ask for another attempt, I will say yes, unless I think you're just guessing. Okay, so, you know, you should be shooting for 80% or higher, and it is the exact same questions on your practice each time. And they're very short, just minutes, like 5 questions per puzzle piece, if that. So reminder, here's like the schedule up until Thanksgiving break, what you should be focusing on. Also in Schoology, I do have one of the study guides ready for you. The one that's worth 100 class points that you have to do. Not the optional one. So that's already available. You might already know how to do most of it. There's only 2 lessons left. So any questions on anything? All right then. I will let you know now, tomorrow I will have a sub about a district training. I always leave stuff for you to do, whether you do it during this hour or not, like I can't control that, but like you see it reflected in your grade. So you have to learn the material at some point. You'll have a note sheet to fill out while you watch a video. You'll have a practice to do, and you get those 2 things done and you're ready for the test. If you don't, you're not. You'll just miss those questions on the test. And really, when there's only like 10 questions, missing 1 is like minus 10 points, you know? So you really just do what you're supposed to do. All right, but first some vocabulary. You have these blanks to fill in as I fill them in. So first, you might be wondering, what even is a correlation coefficient? All right, correlation coefficient, we also will use R to designate it. Don't confuse it with residual. We'll use correlation coefficient or the R value to measure the strength of a linear relationship. The sign of R is the same as the sign of the slope of the best fit line. So if the slope is positive, your R value is positive. If your slope is negative, the R value is negative. If there's no correlation, like no slope, then it's 0 for your R value. All right, now the values for R, our correlation coefficient, go from -1 to +1, and what's in between that. So give me an example of a number in between -1 and +1. 0, what else did I hear? 0.7. Everything in between -1 and +1, and -1 to +1. All right. Now, the closer R is to 1 or -1, the stronger the linear relationship is between the 2 variables. So I think a common misconception is kids think like the closer it is to -1, the weaker. Really, if you want to kind of summarize it in a way you understand, the closer it is to 0, the weaker the linear relationship is. So if it's far from 0, like 1 and -1 are both equally far from 0, the stronger it is. If it's close to 0, the weaker it is. Questions on that vocabulary? Again, do not confuse R value with residuals. They're different. All right, so then moving on to the activity. You have a bunch of different scatter plots on your paper, some on the back too, and you have a list of R values. I would say as an individual should probably take a look first, see which ones you can identify yourself. And the ones that are a bit harder, talk about with your group. All right, but really, there's 8 of them. I'll give you about 5 minutes. By the end of the 5 minutes, try to come to an agreement. All right. So we will rotate between the tables and so forth, but match the scatter plot to the R value based on what I told you. Starting the timer next.
Oops, don't look at that.
That scatter plot, but R value, do you think best applies to that one? Okay, so R equals 1. Anyone disagree with that? Okay, why do you think it's 1?
Because that's the slope. So it's like.
Okay, so it would be further from 0. Slope is class positive or negative. So when you're looking at your options, any that are negative, you should automatically exclude. So really, you're only looking at these as potential options. And would you say that it's pretty linear? Yeah, linear means it looks like a straight line in the form y equals mx plus b. In fact, all the dots are on the line pretty perfectly. So yeah, out of all these scatter plots, R equals 1, best goes with that one. Okay, table 9, what about for B? What? R equals 1. Okay, and so let's look at all the others, see if there's another one that is better. I only have one missing from my screen right now. Let me look at H. So would you guys agree, out of all the scatter plots, this is like the second strongest one? Strongest positive one. So then I would agree with that. All right, it's definitely trending upwards, which you can see by the trend line. Like if you're ever unsure, you could try plotting the data and seeing what the computer tells you. But it does look like it's trending upward, pretty close to the line compared to the other ones. Yeah, I would say that this one would have to be. So then table 1, what about C? Okay. Negative 0.95. So let's see. It does look like it's trending downward. My slope does look negative. So the R value should also be negative. You learned in the vocabulary, it corresponds to the sign of the slope. So your only options are these first 4. Are these relatively close to the line? So that suggests that it's pretty strong, which means it's closer to -1. Why is it not -1 though? Not all the dots are touching it. There's probably other ones that look better to be -1, like which one? Okay, I agree. F looks like it should be R equals -1 there. Strong and negative is how you would describe that correlation. When you get asked that on your test, like on your constructed response, you gotta tell me if it's strong or weak and positive or negative. Questions on that? Okay, so then table 2, we're on D. What R value would you estimate? You mean, this one, negative 0.74? Okay, yes, so option 3. 3 matches with D, the R value is negative 0.74. So we already found the first 2 that match, right? Our only options for D would be these 2. Since you can still tell that it's going downward, I would say that it's closer to the negative 0.74 than the negative 0.06. The negative 0.06 is real close to zero. So I would expect that one to be like less easy to see that it's going down. All right, good. So table 3, what about E? The R value that best matches it. All right, now these two are actually pretty close to each other. So let's compare the scatter plots that are going up because those would have positive R values. So if this one we're saying is 0.65, then the other one that's trending up would have to be a little weaker, a little bit more away from the line. So let's look at, it's not going to be G because it's probably something else for G. It looks like it's trending down a little bit. But compare H and E. Do you think that this R value best matches E class? Okay, good. So just make those comparisons. Those are pretty close, so that's why I took the time to like really enjoy. So that means that this one over here, H, so we just compared those two, it was the only other one that was trending upward, must be 0.48. And then process of elimination, G must be negative 0.06. All right, that's the one that's closest to zero. It's the hardest to tell whether it's going up or down. All right, now we're just estimating our values in here based on how it looks. There are ways to get it exactly. So for example, when you are having to do trend lines in Desmos and things like that, there were like all those menu options. So let's actually do that. Okay. Like gray white showing. But let's just put it in a quick table. Okay, remind me, how do I insert a table into Desmos? Okay, great. And then you hit table. I'm just gonna put in a few points because I just want to show you like one quick thing. All right, so let's look at those points that I just plotted. They're right there, pretty linear. When I type in a different cell to make that code pop up, so like Y1, it automatically formats what do I count to what's next. Good, which you would probably more easily find on your keyboard, but I'm up here. So let's see, MX1 plus B. All right, and then it brings up all the menu options. We're not using R squared at all this year, so just ignore R squared. But R values is your correlation coefficient. So look at what my correlation coefficient is. 1, a positive 1. I have a positive slope. The dots are nice and evenly on it. When I go up here and say, like, I change some of these values, it'll automatically reflect in my, I don't know, graph that I already have. So let me change that to maybe something more drastic like that. Now look at what happens to the R value. It changes. Because now I made it a little less strong. Would you say that an R value of about 0.9 is still strong? Yeah, so you can see it, it can calculate it for you, but you would just have to have all your data points in there. Estimating it, I think is enough. If you know all the vocab on the paper, estimating it will get you by with what you need for the test. All right, so any questions on the activity we just did? All right. So then to summarize, answer these questions in your groups, and it's also on your paper. What does the sign of the correlation coefficient tell you about the data? what does it mean to have a correlation of 1 or -1? What might a scatter plot look like when its line of best fit has a correlation coefficient of 0.9? Sketch it. And what does a scatter plot look like when its line of best fit has a correlation coefficient of -0.5? Sketch that. All right, so this is all on the back of your paper. We'll definitely make sure we answer these, but answer them with your groups. I'm gonna give you like more time than I normally would. We'll check these answers, I'd say in about 10 minutes, like a way long time. Make sure everyone in your group knows the answers to these or agrees on them. We'll definitely review that. When and if you finish early, your puzzle piece is in Schoology. Today we just did lesson 7. Tomorrow you will watch a video for lesson 8. I'm gonna record it today with one of my other classes, which is using the correlation coefficient. So it should be pretty easy tomorrow too, if you understood today's lesson. All right, so we'll go over these in about 10 minutes. Any questions? So table 5, what does the correlation coefficient tell you about the data? Good, how spread out the data is, and what do you say about negative? Positive and negative. Okay. And whether it is positive or negative. Which is true. So of course, if it is closer to 1 or -1, or in other words, farther from 0, then the data is less spread out, I guess you could say, maybe like more linear. So how about we change that to linear? Because linear things could still be spread out, I guess. But I know what you're saying. So how linear data is, it'd be farther from 0, and whether it's positive or negative. So anytime you're asked to describe the correlation, you gotta tell me, is it positive or negative? And is it strong or weak? Both. So then table 6, what does it mean to have a correlation coefficient of 1 or -1? Good, correlation is strong. More linear, like me, more of a straight line if you still don't know what linear means. Specifically if it's the positive one, it's also positive. Specifically if it's the negative one, it's also negative, but strong for sure. Table 7, what might a scatter plot look like when its line of best fit has a correlation of 0.9? So it'd have a positive slope. What else? Anything else? Would it look more like a straight line or less like a straight line? More like a straight line. So when you sketched it, it probably is not going to be a perfectly straight line. So you probably want to draw some that are like a little bit not straight. But for the most part, it is straight. You can tell it's going upward. So something to that effect, but not perfectly straight. Table 8, what about when the line of best fit has a correlation coefficient of -0.5? How would that look?
That way it's going down.
Okay, slope going down or graph going down. Sorry, I spelled that weird. Slope downward. And then what was the other thing you said?
The dot is more scattered.
Okay, more scattered. So dots, more scattered, not like so much that you can't tell the correlation, because you can still tell it'd be going down, that's why it's a negative. But it's not a perfect straight line either, so, I would say something where it looks like it's going down, but it's just not like super straight. Maybe something like that. All right, question on today, pretty easy. Okay, so I really like this unit. I just feel like everything makes so much sense. But anyway, you have your practice to do. You can probably even finish it because you still have 15 minutes left in class. And then you also have that study guide if you finish early. So I hope to also have the constructed response practice test ready for tomorrow too. I'll put it in the bin if you want it early, but I hope to also have all the study guides ready. So that you can just prepare all weekend. And be ready to test by Wednesday.